Welcome, everyone. We're still waiting for a few more participants to join us. Thank you for being here today to our brown bag session. All right, welcome everyone. I'd like to introduce myself for those of you who I have not met and those who I definitely have not met in person. My name is Nellie Meyer and I'm the superintendent of MVLA, and welcome back from our Thanksgiving break. Today we are going to share some information for you on cohorts and hybrid models. So we're very happy to have you with us here today. In addition to welcoming you, I would like to introduce our panelists. We have Mike Matheson, who is our Associate Superintendent of Facilities. We have Layla Benson, who is our Associate Superintendent of Human Resources Personnel. And we also have Terry Fott, who is our Distance Learning Administrator. And so today we look forward to sharing our latest information on the topics at hand. So our agenda this afternoon will include some more information on cohorts, some information on hybrid models that we are planning for in the future, as well as a process that we are developing for return and what our overall data-driven process will look like. We also will give you opportunities to ask questions at the end, and we also want to ask some questions of you. So to start out, I will share that we have been working on our distance learning plans and our virtual offerings in our coursework along certain guiding principles. And so for those of you who have seen this presentation before, you're aware that we are focusing on quality instruction and learning. We are ensuring that we have equitable access for all, that our cohorts have targeted support. We are also looking at how we connect to students. So we are continuing to have synchronous classes virtually and enrichment opportunities, as well as community building. We are also having as a principle the idea of wellness. And one of our future brown bags that you'll hear about includes information that will be specific to wellness. So I do want to invite all of you to attend that as well. Safety guides everything that we do. So we have a testing program. We are adhering to social distancing guidelines, masks, and hygiene, as well as continuing to communicate in a variety of forums, including newsletters, parent groups, different surveys, other communication channels. These brown bags that we've had throughout the last month and into next month in January, as well as other PTSA forums, etc. So I know that everyone here who is in attendance is aware that we have received some information over the weekend that has changed somewhat the county's guidance and directions on how we will possibly proceed as a county. And I want to also share that as you look at our different phases in this presentation that we've been having in multiple forums, we had for the longest period of time really been honing in on phase 3 with safe cohorts returning and prioritized by student need. And while we are still doing that, I do want to share that we do see that we have had a slight half step backwards. And so we are currently in the process of analyzing that guidance and looking to see how these new directives, the ever-changing directives, I will say, impact the work that we're doing. So we are now in a little, living in between phase 2 and 3 and continuing to plan for 3 and 4. So as a district, and I do want to at this point thank our Board of Education, who has been holding extra meetings and having a lot of opportunities for communication and have been very supportive of our students during this time. I would like to thank Sanjay Deve, Fiona Walter, and Debbie Torek for being in attendance today. I also know Phil Falace and Catherine Vonnegut will be joining us as well. And during this period of interesting governance, if you will, we have been starting and have had cohorts that have returned to our campuses. They have been voluntary, they have been targeted, and they have been along guidelines that we have received from the county. So on our campuses at Alta Vista, we have students who are currently on the Alta Vista campus with staff, and they are students who are at great risk of not graduating. And so they are students who need to make up credits, who have great potential to make up those credits, but are in the process of doing so. Many were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, their families and their financial situations. And so at our continuation school, we do have these cohorts in place. At Los Altos High School, we have cohorts that are in place for our English language learners. And we also currently have cohorts that have been in place for the last month or so for athletics. We had students also who needed to improve their grades. At Mountain View High School, we have avid students who are in academic cohorts and who are receiving that extra support for their academic courses. And we also have students that are at risk of failing and are there to make up a D or an F. We have English learners that have been on both campuses for the purposes of doing English language assessment, but we also have students on both campuses in cohorts that are on all campuses for English language support and support within their other classes. And at Mountain View High School, we do have in place, we have had organized athletic cohorts. And right now we are looking at evaluating all of these cohorts to see how we move forward given the new guidance. So we're in the process of evaluating all of these cohorts. Adult education, we have been fortunate to have a location with adult education that is centrally located for many of our students. So we have an English language 9 through 12 cohort for students who are in the first or second level of English learning. And so in those levels, they are also going to the Adult Education Center for support. And then we have in process, but very likely on hold, and many of these may become on hold. We are in that evaluative process, but the cohorts at the senior center and at local faith-based locations, we're very thankful to the city of Mountain View, who has been very supportive and willing, but currently we do not have those cohorts in place. And it's highly likely that we're not going to be starting new cohorts in the next few weeks, given the recent change in direction from public health. Okay, I want to give you an idea of what a safe cohort looks like. So we'll start by sharing what the classroom looks like without students. So we have been in the process of preparing classrooms, and as you can see, we are separating the desks. The guidance that we have is that they should be 6 feet apart. And we also have guidance around the cohorts that state that the classroom needs to be stable, that they should have a seating chart that is the same every time, and that students remain in that stable seating chart. There's a lot of guidance about how to leave and enter the room, have the doors open, for example, how to have breaks that are safe and socially distanced. We're also mandating that masks be worn within all of our cohort rooms. It may go without saying, but I will share that the reason that the stable cohort needs to have a standardized and consistent seating chart really connects to our contact tracing. So if we do have a case where we do have a positive case within one of our cohorts, at that point we shut down the cohort for 2 weeks, but it assists public health as they look to proceed with contact tracing to see where students are sitting within the room. So as you can see here, students, just one example, and this is a pretty nice big room, and we have been using those big rooms first. So you can see what it looks like without students. And so in addition to implementing cohorts and setting up safety protocols at school, we are also, and you're looking at the team right now that has been doing a lot of the work, in addition to our principals and our director of adult education, we've been working very hard to plan. And as I'm sure you're aware, as everyone is very informed about current events, it really has been going back and forth a little bit. But nonetheless, we want to make sure that we are ready, that we have a plan that is a transition plan that is clear and consistent and something that we can make sure to follow. So with that being said, we do not know when we will return, and we are asked that on a regular basis, but we want to make sure that we're prepared with the plan and that we are following the data around the plan. To guide the plan, excuse me. All right. Why are we planning for physical return? There are a lot of reasons, and as parents and staff and community, I'm sure that you're aware of the importance of community and being together. And so some of the reasons that we're making sure that we're planning is that we know traditional school is the best modality. That being said, safety is of utmost importance and really something that we are putting at the forefront of every decision. So some of the reasons that we want to gradually begin to bring students back when we can include that it helps them with increased social and academic engagement. It also is an opportunity for them to receive direct instruction and have that personal check-in and assessment that you can only have in person with a student. I realize in watching our classrooms and visiting virtually, our teachers every day are getting better and better at being able to look into the Zoom picture and to see how students are doing and to ask questions, and they're having breakout rooms, et cetera. And so their abilities just have increased greatly every day, but nothing really compares with that ability to be together. So we relish the chance that we will have to someday be back. We want to make sure that we increase teacher contact. And so there's a way that teachers have, it's really part of the art of teaching, where they connect and they observe students, they assess, but they also have a great ability to check in, and that really correlates with a stronger community and stronger success within the classroom. And then also that ability to connect with their peers. The high school experience is so much about how students interact with their peers, and many of us remember it from many years ago. And really, those social interactions are what we remember most. So we know that students want to connect and collaborate, and that their learning grows when they are able to do that. So really another reason that we're planning for that opportunity in the future. And then lastly, we know that students benefit from routines and structures. And so students will, when we are able to return, can increase their routine and structure. And we've been recommending that those structures and routines are created at home. And students have told us that those who have either put themselves or where their family is on a regular schedule, it has been much more beneficial, and that they have been able to get into a positive rhythm. So those are the reasons that we are planning for a physical return. All right. So with that, I would like to introduce again Terry Fott, and she's going to share some information with us about the hybrid. And this may be a repeat for those of you who join us frequently, but I think each time you hear it, there's something new to learn. And so, Terry, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So as Dr. Meyer noted, our cohorts are targeted for a particular group of students, whether it be academic support or, when possible, extracurricular. So it's more or less niche specific. Hybrid is about classes and class schedule. And the difference is that a student is just returning to school on a particular day or days of a week in person in accordance to their class schedule, working in their classes with classmates. And at other days of the week, they're at home working in those classes remotely in accordance to their class schedule. So where last year at this time, we were all in person, currently we're all in distance. So hybrid is a fusion of the two, and it's figuring out the best form of a schedule to bring our students on campus in person certain days of the week, and supporting them at home remotely learning as well. And these schedules can take all different shapes and sizes. It really depends on the size of the student population, the complexity of the master schedule. So what we're going to share with you today are just a few examples, some of probably the stronger fits for our district, but not necessarily what we're determining to move forward with. This first example is what's known as a rotation model. If we could go to the next slide, please. And so in this model, as this example, we split the student population in half. So half the population, first half of the alphabet would be group A, and then M through Z, the second half would be group B. And in this hybrid, group A would be at campus in their classes at school on Monday and Tuesday, participating with their teachers and half of the students that are in their current classes, where the other half of our student population would be at home tending to their classes on Monday and Tuesday, but doing so remotely. And then Thursday, Friday, these two student populations do a switch. And so then group B goes to campus on Monday and Tuesday, working with half of their classmates and their teachers, and group A is at home learning remotely. And when I refer to learning remotely, that too can take a couple of different forms. And if you look at the bottom right corner, that's the considerations we're currently talking about. One could be where we're doing a type of synchronous learning or synchronous teaching, where students at home will be on Zoom watching class, participating with the lessons and the material, while the students in person are also participating with those same lessons and material. And another option that we are discussing right now with hybrid is an asynchronous style, which is an example. The teacher posts their slates on Friday like they currently do, and it'll give the lessons for that upcoming week. And if the students are in, let's say, Group B Monday, Tuesday, they're working on those lessons asynchronously on their own at home, while Group A is working on those same lessons in class with the teacher, and the teacher could provide some extra support, some group collaboration or pair shares were needed, and then it flip-flops later on in the week. Either of those models, we just want to be clear though, that the students would be experiencing the same lessons, the same standards throughout the week. It's just how they're going to do it, whether they're at home or in person, would look possibly different for them, synchronous or asynchronous. Another example of this hybrid model would be if we, as an example, deemed that 50% of the student population was just a little too much for us right now. And we decided, next slide, please, to go into thirds. And so in this situation, could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. In this situation, we would break the student population down into thirds. So only a third of the students are in their class, creating a little bit more social distance and spacing. And what this may look like is students are on campus fewer times during the week. In this particular example, Group A would come Monday, Tuesday, and then BC only once a week. And then the next week it would rotate. So then Group B is on campus Monday, Friday, and the others one day a week, and then it rotates again. So each group within 3 weeks are on campus twice, trying to support that experience, but also trying to support the need to do social distance. And again, there's other forms for hybrid. It could be half day, where half the student population comes in the morning and then goes home in the during lunch, and then the other population comes in during lunch to finish up at the afternoon at school. Or we could look at a week on, week off, where half the school is at school for half the students are at school for the full week, while the others are remote for a full week, and then they flip flop. So again, some different varieties that we're currently discussing to decide what the best fit is, but reinforcing that a hybrid means that students are on campus in person with a portion of their student population for part of the week, and at home remotely learning for part of the week. And with this, there was a question that was brought up early on, and that is, well, if we still want our student to be with their class schedule and their teachers, but we don't feel comfortable with them coming back hybrid, could they stay remote but still be with their classes and their teacher remotely? And we are definitely looking into that consideration and finding that that has some high potential in it. So great question, and yes. As well, we are running option B. We started that program for the first time this year in August, and we're going to continue regardless of what happens with what's going on the main campuses. We're going to continue running option B for the rest of the school year. That means that it's starting up again as a new semester coming in January. Option B is not being with MVLA teachers and MVLA students in synchronous or classes like they're possibly experiencing right now. It's experiencing an asynchronous style independent study online learning platform. We use Edgenuity and UC Scout as our education platforms and their teachers. They're supported by myself as well as MVLA facilitating or mentor teachers to check in on them. And more information about option B is actually getting released tomorrow, with several info and Q&A sessions following over the next couple of weeks. But we just wanted to reaffirm you in this meeting that we are definitely running this option. And if a student wants to move from option A into option B at the semester or vice versa, we are allowing those switches. So stay tuned to more information with that. And at that point, Dr. Meyer, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we do have a poll question next. Whoops. Let's go back one. Okay. So a question for those who are participating. Upon return, would you prefer, and so this is just to get a sense of what you would prefer upon return, cohorts for academics, cohorts for extracurriculars, hybrid learning models, as we've discussed, option B, or no preference. And I do want to share this is a non-binding poll. We just want to get some feedback given as we continue to have conversations about really where the greatest interest lies. And that helps us. And I know many of you are voting now, so please do vote. That helps us as we try and problem solve. So please share what your priority is amongst all of these different options. And panelists, I'm sorry, you cannot vote. Okay, we have about 80% who have voted. We're going to wait just one more second. If you have not chosen an option, please do so. Okay. Okay. One more moment. Okay, it looks like we peaked here. A few of you are still going to think about it. Our results we will see together, so please share those. Okay. So this really does look like it is in line with feedback we have received. We have more than actually a tie, academics and hybrid, which do really go together. There's a desire and a preference for focusing on the academics, and very closely behind a recognition of the importance of extracurriculars of all kinds. And then option B really does reflect the percentage, and maybe a little smaller. I think those who are in option B already are aware of where they're going to stay. So 6% with option B. So thank you for participating in that. All right. So something else that we're sharing with you, and we want to share today for the first time, when we went into the purple category, which was really about 2 weeks ago, we immediately started to think about what that would mean and how that would impact our district, and really how we could best use data to show where we are. And whoops, did it go back? Hello? Okay. To show where we are. So I wanted to show the concept of what we did. And so we started to create a tiered response. And I do see in the Q&A that someone mentioned the idea of when it would be best to come back. Shouldn't it be perhaps orange or even yellow? And so what we have done here is you can see the different tiers according to public health. And we know that during purple that our primary mode will be distance learning, and that ideally as we move towards green that we will be able to move towards traditional instruction. And so given that premise, we worked to try and fill in the boxes in between. We also plan, as Terry mentioned, to continue to have option B throughout. Even when we do return and have the ability to return fully, we do know that option B and having that independent opportunity has worked very well for some students. So we do plan on continuing that as well. And so what we did as we worked to plan what each of these categories would mean, first we put the data within each of the boxes, so we were aware and we had a benchmark that was clear to everyone about what the criterion was for each of the categories. And then I'll show you here, we created a draft of a pandemic tiered response. And so as you can see, within this, we used the spring, and we used the summer and this fall to learn from how this the tiers progressed, and how we slowly started gradually being able to come back, and what conditions allowed for that return. And so using that information that we had, and also looking to see what we needed to do to open up, we planned a tiered response. So you can see here in the purple that the primary mode would be distance learning, but in the most critical period, the purple time frame, we would not have cohorts. And we do have exceptions that are below. And so in the box, you can see that there's an asterisk. So we are going to continue to have an open mind around exceptions to phases, according to students having critical needs. And we also want to consider existing cohorts that are already in place and working well. And we also want to consider allowing conditioning when we can. And we also want to increase opportunities later once we get to orange. And so these three asterisks were things that we were able to gradually fold in the spring, after our initial period of, for lack of a better word, of a lockdown took place in our first month of March. So you can see here, the cohorts would be approved by staff on site, and they would be for functions that were deemed essential. We would have staff return, so this third box is about staff. So immediately we knew we were allowed to have custodial staff. We were asked to have food service staff, and we certainly had management staff who have been here. And these were going to be according to what was deemed essential by Santa Clara County. So in the purple, we were going to the more restrictive essential mode. And as I said, this is our draft response. Then as you look to the red, and hopefully we will be progressing out of the purple, we continue with our primary mode of distance learning, but we do see that the daily cases would be decreasing in the county, and that the positivity rate also would be decreasing. We have had some feedback that another metric that would be of interest might be what the likelihood would be of contracting COVID for every interaction, but we stuck to the two that are used to determine the tiers. Then in the red, we would have increased targeted student cohorts. And so we would continue with looking at what cohorts we could bring back during the red and gradually start to increase those. In the third box here, staff, they would volunteer to be on site, particularly those that can work from home. And we would, as I said earlier, continue with option B, distance learning. In the orange, we would continue to look at the number of cases. So cases between 1 and under 4 per 100,000, and the positivity rate. And this is where we would start to introduce the hybrid models that you are seeing that we've been talking about. And we would also continue with distance learning where necessary. And in this case, we would increase cohorts for academics, and we would, as seen here below on where the asterisk is, you can see here that we would be increasing our opportunity for social interactions, clubs, different methods and reasons for cohorts, extracurriculars, increasing athletics to the point of possibly, hopefully, being able to have competitions, which we know have been put on hold. So orange there, and then continuing with more and more volunteer staff on site. Going to yellow, as you can see, then we would move further to hybrid. We do see hybrid as a bridge to traditional, not the ideal mode necessarily in itself, but a bridge. And then we would work towards more traditional return with mitigations when we are in the yellow. And we would know that with each of these tiers, we would be allowed increasing numbers within our social gathering. And then we are looking at option A, distance learning, and this is still to be determined. Option A, distance learning. So I think that needs to be noted that this is part of a draft, and that also staff to be determined. And so the bulk of the conversations that we're having currently with our employees would be around the topics within the yellow tier. And then also we would continue to have option B, independent distance learning. And then lastly, of course, what we're all hoping for, the green, where we can come back with a more traditional instruction, although we do hope to keep some of the positive things that we were able to create during the pandemic, more distance learning opportunities, sharing of information, sharing of resources. And then during that time, we would see everything resuming and a full staff return. So that kind of gives you a sense of what our tiered response will be and what metrics we are using to define those responses, and what our plan is for what the return would look like. Okay, so we are planning to continue our brown bag webinars, and very frankly, everything has been changing over the break, over Thanksgiving, and we're all on receiving alerts from public health. So the information is changing for us daily, sometimes within the same day. So we do plan to have a check-in on Friday, and we may have more information on extracurriculars at that time. We're planning to have a reopening update on the 10th, because we will have a board meeting on the 14th. And during that time, we will be presenting the tiered process to the Board of Education. We also will have an option B update. And as Terry mentioned, we are having multiple option B updates. So if you are an option B, you will receive that separately, but you're welcome to join. And then also when we return, we're going to continue brown bags, but we do know our first week back that we will have a focus on the wellness activities, the health and safety activities that are taking place virtually. So there's, if you're interested, you can go onto our website, our front page, and you can register and sign up. And we look forward to having you there. I don't know if anyone's eating, but they are at lunchtime, and they're designed to be a time, hopefully, that you can find during your calendar to maybe do a little multitasking with us and join us. All right, so the next portion of our brown bag, and we know that as educators, usually lunch is about 35 minutes, and so but we go a little longer. We're going to ask some questions, and we have our panelists here. And so I will start, and I may throw it to content experts, and we may not have the answer to all of these questions. And if we don't, we're certainly taking note of them. We record them, and we will either have them in a further communication or find out that information and either put it in our website on an FAQ or right back to you specifically. So to start out, if you go to an AB model, and thank you for this question, where half the class attends in person on Monday in period 1, and the other half attends period 1 on Thursday, with half at home, will the half at home be on Zoom? They can see a profile of the teacher teaching the in-person students and be present with the class in session. Only one sync per week per subject isn't enough. And thank you for that question. We are definitely right now speaking with our staff and working with through the negotiation process on what the model would look like and what the requirements will be for the teachers who are teaching. And so duly noted, this is not the first time we've had the comment that there is a desire to have more than one synchronous interaction a week, and looking at other models in different districts, primarily at younger ages, because there aren't a lot of high school models out there. But looking at those models, the feedback that we've seen is that parents, in some cases, not all, have been disappointed that they're having less direct instruction. But we are certainly, that's part of the yellow conversation that we're still having in the yellow tier about what that will look like, whether it will be simultaneous teaching from home and in the classroom, or whether it will be independent learning. Okay. A question here. I heard there were 30 kids in the cohorts on both campuses. There were only 30 students for academics, but hundreds are failing. What percentage of students are eligible, and how are they going to be able to receive these services? Thank you for that question. We had been increasing our cohorts on a regular basis. And right now we paused that. We are stopping the creation of new cohorts and taking this time to evaluate and make sure our safety protocols are triply sure. We definitely have been monitoring them and know that they are, but we are not increasing at this time. But we certainly have more than 30 students. So I believe this was something stated perhaps more than one board meeting ago, but we have been gradually increasing them. They are capped, our academic cohorts are capped at 15, and that includes 2 adults or 1 adult. And then we also are using other methods to work with teachers, and teachers have been working with families and students on how best to make up classes and how best to achieve during this difficult time. So we are seeing that our numbers of students failing has decreased greatly, but we are continuing to monitor them. Okay, next question. Can you help us understand why athletics have been prioritized over other students for cohorts? Yes, the initial guidance, and it wasn't right away when we closed in March, but it was, I believe, around April, May. Youth sporting groups began to they were slowly being able to be allowed countywide. And so for youth recreation, there were a set of guidelines that were created for students on how to proceed and how to participate in recreational activities, and athletics was deemed to be in line and have the same guidelines. And so given that, we, I would say, had the green light to proceed with youth sports and athletics prior to specific cohorts. And so we also then were we matched up staff, and we did have a number of coaches who were able to come in and work successful with our athletic cohorts. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that it was a prioritization. I think, but it was the public health did prioritize youth recreational activities. So yes, that was the case. During that time that youth activities were allowed, only elementary schools were allowed to reopen, and that had to be with a specific elementary plan and a waiver. So yes, that was something that occurred, and truly, while I don't disagree with it, the behind the scenes thinking on that was not shared, but it was something that we proceeded with. All right. Next question. I've been getting conflicting information about what is happening with football at Mountain View High School, and I've heard that training cohorts would continue despite the move to the purple tier. We also heard that practices would happen over break, but this weekend my son heard it had been canceled until further notice. What is happening with athletics and why? Great question. Over the weekend, Saturday, Dr. Sarah Cody shared um, actually had a press conference and shared information that changed our thinking about athletic cohorts. And I also want to say that our cohorts at both of our campuses have been in place. They have had a successful process when there have been positive cases of shutting down and following the protocols. And it was my understanding that at Mountain View High School that this last week, that was one of the reasons that that it was not occurring, because there was a positive case. But what we are doing now, we received recent guidance that stated that that for athletics, and it really has always been the case, that conditioning is the only thing allowed and that contact is not allowed. But in addition, that was added in the recent guidance from Dr. Sarah Cody said, or groups with close proximity, or any groups that where students would have close proximity to anyone outside of their household. And so that gave us great pause, especially as we're seeing the numbers increase. And so, we know that within each of our cohorts that they have young people that are outside of their household. And so we want to make sure that, we are certainly being cautious and thoughtful as we saw the numbers skyrocket Saturday to the point of where a press conference was called. And so we are right now pausing our athletic cohorts on both of our campuses. I know they've been paused for a variety of reasons over the last few months, but we are going to continue to evaluate them, and we're certainly working with the county and working with public health and looking at the best move forward. So that is what is happening, and that is why. And we also definitely recognize the benefit of the cohorts and the positive implementation that our coaches had. They are doing a great job of this, but we are concerned with the increased numbers. All right. Here's another one. Do we need to be at least at orange to even consider hybrid? And if by August we're in a similar situation, will we be repeating distance learning in the fall? And thank you for this question. I see you asked it before I presented that portion. So we're thinking right along the same lines. We want to make sure that as we proceed, that the data supports the safest time to come in. We want to limit going back and forth as much as possible, but we continue to see back and forth even over this weekend from public health with their guidance. It's no fault of theirs, really. They're just continuing to clarify. And so thank you for that question. How have students been impacted by the shutdown? What are the stats and data? I read that standardized testing has been canceled, and the testing should be done to show the impact. Great question. A lot of the standardized testing has been shut down. And to your point, this morning I read that one of the national norms tests that we give every year that would really have helped us learn about learning loss has been canceled. And so that NAEP test is a test that California and other states use to see how we're progressing given the variety of standards nationally. And so that was people were relying on that particular test to give us some feedback on learning loss, and it was canceled this morning. As far as, and you didn't ask it, but I will share, we're also looking at the PSAT test, the SATs, the ACTs, and currently we don't want to overpromise that we will be able to offer that. We are signing up, but we have found out that that may be an impossibility given the new direction. And so we're working hard to see what we can do to make sure our 11th graders who are eligible for the merit scholarships are able to take the PSAT, but that also is a struggle, so you're aware. And so we are relying on other ways to measure learning loss, and really look forward to having some standardized testing. I never thought I would say that, but having some standardized testing return. All right, are option B students taking the same or similar finals as the rest of the students? Great question. I'm going to hand that one to Terry.
Sure, thank you. Yes, they are taking similar finals. They are taking a final exam, which is cumulative for the classes that they're in. Depending on the class, it could be a 75 question multiple choice. It may be an essay or a combination of the two. They're not the same final exams because they're not in classes by MVLA teachers, but format, content, rigor, etc. They're very similar.
All right, thank you. Are we strongly considering the 1 week on, 1 week off for hybrid? It seems like the model that would be the least disruptive for teaching and learning. Thank you for that question. We are actually looking at all the three major models that are used. The one that has been the most predominant across the nation has been the AB model, but we are not taking anything off the table at this time, because as we want to think it through and talk it through together to see what would be the least disruptive, and we want to make sure that we engage students and teachers in that conversation. But yes, you know, I think there are pros and cons to that one in particular. If we do a hybrid model, will we also do cohorts for extracurriculars and athletics? Yes, likely, yes. As we start to move into the hybrid, you know, as soon as we see increases in cohorts, it is likely, once that we're given permission for that we would start to increase the numbers over that 13. Option A, distance learning. We are still in the process of discussing what that might look like, but we do know that some staff members may not be able to physically return for personal health reasons, family health reasons, and so we want to explore the possibility of having some of our teachers continue to teach in a distance mode, but very frankly, it's very early on in that conversation. Next question, does conditioning refer to athletic conditioning or something else? Good question. And I'm glad you asked that, because I was thinking of you, because you're the person who asked me last week about this. And yes, it refers to athletic conditioning only. And it is something that we do know that students could be encouraged to do at a distance as well. So we are currently in the process of evaluating that. All right. Does your tiered response line up with county health recommendations, or is it MVLA's response? Is there a possibility you will not? Okay, I'll take that one first. This currently is our recommended response. And so we are now in the process of vetting this response. This group right here, and I see the participants, you're the first to see in the community to see the fully, the more detailed version. And so it is currently what we're working on. And so we want to clearly state this is MVLA's response. It lines up with county health only in that you can see the tiers and the gradual loosening of restrictions. County Health has not provided us with specifics such as those that you see on the chart. Okay, next part of this same inquiry. Is there a possibility you will not open for full traditional instruction for next school year? Sadly, yes. We are hopeful. We really don't know. And I will point to over the Thanksgiving break, we had about 3 different directions that we heard with a lot of different information. So it's changing very quickly. And then the news about any type of vaccine also is changing very quickly. So I can't fully answer that, but there is always that possibility. And seek feedback from parents regarding which cohorts. Okay, I love that. Definitely. Thank you for that comment. Okay, so next time we rise to orange, will hybrids start the following week? And if not, when? Excellent question. When we rise, I like calling it rise. Thank you for that phrase. To orange, we are working with teachers to make sure that they have time to plan and prepare. And so there will likely be a transition period. But one of the things that we also don't want to do is go back and forth a lot. So when we are in orange, if we did slip back into red, we're still discussing what that might look like. Right now, the public health guidance has been and that's why we have it on our chart, to consider existing cohorts when you can. And so that will be something that we will continue to do. But great question. And so the answer is yes, we will likely have a transition period, and we'll have more information about that as we continue to settle that and work with our associations. All right, how are cohorts determined, criteria, grade level? Excellent question. We are looking at, as was mentioned earlier, students who have not had success with their grades, but we recognize that we also have students who may be in categories that need extra support, students with disabilities, as an example. We are monitoring and working with our staff, our strong staff in special education, to make sure that we are doing the best we can to provide access for all students. And so we are prioritizing students in special education, students who are English learners, and then we are looking at those who have not had success with grades. But we also have to match it with staff. And so in some cases, for very legitimate reasons, we have staff who are not able to match up with their cohort of students. And so that is where we are continuing to problem solve on how best to support different cohorts of students, perhaps with different staff members. We also recognize, and I see here grade level, we know that freshmen especially have not been able to connect yet. And so we do recognize that freshmen should be prioritized if we are looking at any particular grade level. And then we also have criteria where we have specific courses that lend themselves or have a need for a cohort, perhaps more than another cohort. And so with a broad generalization, I could say that a history course would not have the need for as many hands-on opportunities, although they're there, as a science course or even a physical education course. So we are looking at labs, for example, and we have an internal process where we have staff members who are willing and able to participate, who have different proposals for cohorts, and we have been reviewing those. Okay, and yes, I agree. Our family doesn't want a decrease in synchronous learning when we go to a hybrid. Thank you for that feedback. Music cohorts, thank you. Music cohorts, and I really, our music programs, first of all, are amazing. And so and they're really what engage our students. And I've been so pleased with the virtual presentations I've been able to watch. Thank you to our great students and teachers who have shared those with myself and the board. That being said, it comes down to, I the projection and the opportunities to share. I don't want to say fluids necessarily, but to music in particular, singing, cheer in particular, yelling or cheering, have been just put on a more concerning list, given the expulsion, if you will, of particles. And so that being said, if we did have any type of proposal for a cohort that was in the range of what we can do, while we are currently pausing, we certainly would encourage anyone who wants to creatively think about that to propose that. So when we can have increased cohorts, we have a model in place. Okay, I see a comment saying, I don't see anything about special ed, and I think this question was asked before I mentioned that. And yes, I agree that our transition programs, our special day class students, and we recognize that our special education students in many areas are struggling, not only with understanding, a variety of, understandings on the spectrum, from very challenged to not understanding why we're not in school at all. And so as a result, we're currently working to help support this most vulnerable population. And so we're looking at how we can have cohorts and creatively in a virtual fashion, allowing for that interaction virtually. And then as well as students with special needs who have specific services that are provided by outside vendors, we're working to make sure we're within the guidelines of public health on whether those vendors may or may not go to the home. So we're continuing to develop that. So thank you for that question. What can be done to increase class size for return? The 6-foot distance is not compelled by science. A smaller distance could work with other mitigations and have, so to answer that, we've seen the same information that states that, and you're right. We've also, depending on the guidance that we've received, we've been told on that 10-foot is preferable. Certainly 6-foot is preferable, but you're right. They have been, public health has been very clear about not calling it a requirement. They have been calling it a recommendation. And so as we look at the layering on of supports and protections, as we start to phase out of the more serious purple and red tiers, I do anticipate we would start to be able to have an increased class size, not necessarily certainly to the class size that we had in the past, but yes, that 6 feet requirement has been something that we're working as a general guideline. To the second part, yes, I think we're in agreement. HVAC, ventilation, humidity control, all of those things will help. Have we looked at return without AB cohorts? Separate cohorts adds huge difficulties and a good chance off-campus cohorts will have unsupervised interactions. The different types of return, not necessarily AB, we've looked at lengthier periods. One of the models, and I'm telling you, we've looked at a lot of models. So this one I haven't seen in practice, but there are different things that we're looking at where students come for a quarter, then they stay home. And so there are different ways of looking at it. And I do see your comment about off-campus cohorts having unsupervised interactions. Yes, that is certainly always a concern with high school students. And thank you for your thank you. I see that. Thanks. Assuming vaccines are distributed during summer, will students be required to show proof of vaccine to return in person to school? Excellent question. We don't know yet, but we know with the Tdap and with other vaccinations, they are required. So we do have a structure in place for that protocol. And it is likely that that could be the case, assuming things are in place. I will say that that there right now has been some legislative action, some conversations with legislators about who would be the first to receive vaccines. We know very clearly that health workers should and will be first, but also there have been conversations about those who are in high risk physical groups, have physical ailments, or are elderly, but within that, educators have been a part of that conversation. And so there has been a lot of discussion about educators being some of the earlier groups to have access to that vaccine, and also students, because it really goes hand in hand. Grades. Oh, I see. Okay. A question here about, have the grades been impacted? What is the data on grades so far? Excellent question. We discussed the data on grades a couple of board meetings ago, and what we saw, we looked at the D's and F's, and we did see that both comprehensive high school campuses had more D's and F's in that first quarter than they had last year. We have already been running the data for the second quarter, and while we don't have a final we don't have the final information yet. It is, it has progressed. We do see that number is shrinking. And so we are looking at, intervening and really trying to identify why those students are struggling, whether they are not attending at all, whether they're having technical difficulties, et cetera. That refers to the D's and F's. The A, B's, and C's, or I should say the B's and C's that may have been A's, that is something as well that we are working through the regular process. So we are encouraging students and families to contact their teachers, or have the students ask of their teachers what they can do to improve, much like they would normally, and to also share with their teachers, counselors, or administrators if there's anything in the way. And so while I don't have those numbers right in front of me, we did see an increase, and we're continuing to monitor that. Oh, Mountain View High has special masks for singers. I think that is just wonderful to hear. First of all, I've seen those masks in social media, and I think we really need to continue to innovate. And so I think that if we are able, we need to see what we can do to help mitigate. And if that helps us come back more quickly, that's great. Thank you for your thank you again. Okay, I'm reading now kind of a note to me, and thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And this message is being put out. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for the lovely note. And I think the comment speaks to that some students perhaps are, especially if they're not in a cohort, or they're not in athletics, or they haven't been, that they're still feeling not the need to be connected in a more authentic way. So I appreciate your comment, and I really appreciate your positive comments about our presentation. Oops, I read it out loud. It says, just for you. Okay. Here's another one. Okay, here's just some comment about cheerleading. And yes, I agree. There are different ways to cheerlead where you don't need to do that. And so, yes, we'll continue to talk about what we can do to increase this when we are able. And I love this, virtual pep rallies. That's a great idea. Very great idea. And then okay. Just a comment about teachers when we are in hybrid, would they rotate testing, that it could pile up on a student? And I think that is a strong comment anytime, but even more so during virtual learning, especially with a block period, which we will continue because you're more likely to have multiple tests, and that can feel like a finals week during a regular week. So we'll take that for conversation. Okay, so just a question. Can you talk a little bit about the teacher's viewpoint? And it appears they're opposed to hybrid. And what are we doing to discuss that? Thank you for that question. I can't necessarily speak for teachers, but they have spoken to me. And there are concerns about the hybrid model as really an instructional modality. And for that reason, we recognize that there are other reasons that we would have a hybrid model, and looking at it as a bridge to come back. And as far as what we're doing to change minds or ideas or attitudes about hybrid or other topics, one thing that we are doing together, that document I showed that has the tiers, I think what that does is it clearly articulates for parents, for students, for teachers, that there's a method and a reasoning behind why we're moving and why we're doing what we're doing. And I think especially for someone who might have to come in contact with a large number of students on any given day and maybe concerned about their personal health, that there is comfort knowing that this is a thoughtful approach, that this is one that takes into consideration doing everything we can to not only communicate, but protect staff and students. And we're also having large all-day conversations with our teachers and classified employees. Okay. No, I don't, questioner, have an idea of why the public health is using positive cases instead of number of deaths. I would only presume to guess. And that, yes, thank you. And you know more than I can already tell by your question that the fatality rate is usually the guiding factor in epidemiology. But my guess would be that it helps them better contact trace and find the source and hopefully find the actions that might be leading to the spread and clamp down on those. And that really is what I believe the reason that we had the press conference and the big announcement this Saturday. There's a desire to clamp down on, for the moment, to clamp down on interacting with those outside of households as much as we would like to. So with that, I have to say your questions were amazing. And now, okay, we have one more poll for you before we move. And this sign here, we're using this in all of our presentations: wash your hands, consult a doctor, wear a mask, stay home if you can, socially distance. I want you all to know, we know you know this, but it helps always to have this reminder. Okay, our last question: which topic would you like more information about? And I really wish our panelists could vote on this, but they can't. So, all right, cohorts, hybrid models, option B, physical preparations, all of the above, or other. So we'll give you a few moments while I will just continue to thank you for your excellent questions today and welcome you back from hopefully a nice holiday. Wow, 92%. You guys went straight to that and answered it right away. 100%. Wow, this is my first 100%. Okay, let's see what the answer is. Oh, hybrid. Okay. This really helps because as we've done the presentation, sometimes I admit I get feedback, quit talking about this portion. And so we want to be mindful of what you need to know, and also respect though that there are others not with us today on this call that may need to know the other stuff. But cohorts 48, hybrid 63. Okay. Option B, I think we've done a good job with that. Physical preparations, always something new to learn. All of the above, thank you. And other. Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And then with that, I would like to thank you. I'd like to thank our wonderful panel here who've done a lot of work behind the scenes. Thank you all for being here, and have a great day. We'll see you at the next brown bag. Thank you all. Bye.